So the good news is I really liked the movie. And I feel like you returned to some of the heart of the series on television, that you somehow managed to wed. I mean, there's great visual effects, but you somehow brought it back to an analog human scale. And I wondered what your intention was in that regard.
Well, my engagement with Star Trek is the original series. I grew up with watching it with my family from 8 to 18, and so when the opportunity came to be a part of it, I kind of was drawing back to my relationship with the series. And the one thing that I always remember is that, and now I think having been a filmmaker and having worked in TV and stuff, I realized it was the sense of limitation that was there, and it was a group of people that got together and said, okay, well, it's TV and you only have so many sets, but we're going to keep pushing the boundary. And so I think when I look back at the old series now, I feel that. I feel like there's that relationship, not just with the characters on screen, but there's a lot of people who are trying to bring the humanity into that journey, And so as we were getting ready and shooting this film, I wanted to have that, because I think CG and visual effects has kind of evolved into its own kind of aesthetic, and I wanted to kind of bring that back. So I had hours and hours and hours of great conversation with the camera people, with Steve Winden, the cinematographer, even with Peter Chang, who's the visual effects supervisor, about the construction of the shot. How are we going to achieve the shot? Like, even if it's a space shot, like, what kind of vessels are they in? Is it, we're going to do a nodal move? And I think by doing that, I had a great time, because in essence, it's bringing the humanity back into telling the story.
Well, you, through the Fast and Furious films, have learned every single angle on an action move that there is, and you've managed to, what's great about that series is that you've always kept it on a human scale. It's in the real world. Even when they're doing outrageous things, you're not in a fantasy world.
Yeah. And I think that's, I didn't grow up wanting to be like an action director. That wasn't my dream, And so when I had the opportunity, my process has always been exactly the same. In the design of the shot, the lens you pick, everything has to come from, the characters. And so, now my career somehow has taken me to a point where I'm doing a lot of big budget action movies, but the construction, the process is maintained. It's been the same.
But you kept those characters front and center in the Fast and Furious series the whole time, and that's what you do here. So tell me how your first conversations with JJ, how did you present yourself to him?
It was interesting, because I was shooting in Ventura and I got a call from him in my hotel room, and I was like, oh, it's JJ Abrams. And he asked, he's like, do you have any interest or any relationship with Star Trek? And it kind of took me by surprise, and that was Thursday, and I was going to go to a face-to-face meeting with them on Monday. So, those 3 days to me, they're very important, because I had to kind of answer for myself, like, do I want to be a part of this? Because logistically, it was going to be insane. Because going from nothing to production, it was going to be 6 months. And
that's daunting for anyone, and many directors have turned away from that.
Yeah, so I think, I remember I went and I drove to have dinner with my folks, and it was that dinner that made me realize, wow, it is a bigger part of me, and it's worth the, I think the challenge, and the level of engagement was about hopefully getting together a group of people who are equally, or have different points of passion for this, and let's build it together, and let's kind of treat this as the biggest budget indie movie ever made, and that was very important to me. And when I talked to JJ on Monday, it wasn't really any specifics. I just felt like at 50 years, it's probably time to, hopefully come up with a journey that's going to potentially, deconstruct Star Trek, deconstruct the Federation, deconstruct everything that we love about this franchise. And hopefully by the end, along with these characters, it reaffirms to us why we have so much passion for them and for it, and that hopefully it can kind of take us into for another 50 years.
Where was the script at the point that you came on board?
There was no idea.
So how did you come up with those two writers?
JJ had relationships with Simon and Doug, and the idea, the basic idea of deconstructing, and in this case, it was actually a very literal deconstruction of taking the Enterprise away in the first act. That was the first idea.
Horrifying. I got so upset.
And it should be emotional. And I love that ship, and I think to be able to, it's their home. It's the vessel that takes them, on this shared journey, and to rip that away from them from the very beginning. In many ways, we're left with these characters who now has to kind of figure out what they're going to do.
But what I loved was that you actually have them poking around this godforsaken planet, climbing over the rocks. I mean, how many episodes of Star Trek do they do that,
Well, it's so much fun, like location scouting, because I know they were all in studio and stuff. So, and I feel like, well, now we have the budget. Let's go find those real locations. And so it was a lot of fun, just like going all over the place, all over the world, actually, to find those places.
Where did you shoot that planet?
It was a combination of Vancouver and also Dubai. So yeah, we scouted like Singapore. We went all over the place, and it was a lot of fun.
So you also went with a lot of humor, which clearly comes from Simon Pegg. I mean, I understand he was like acting out the different characters. And I thought that you handled that balance very well. Carl Urban is hysterical.
Oh, Carl was great. And I think growing up, like, McCoy was the kind of curmudgeon uncle that I always wanted, And so I got the call. I think the first draft went out, and Carl called, and he's like, "Oh, I love it," So I had this special bond, not only with McCoy, but then this love for McCoy with Carl. So like, I just love kind of huddling up with them every day, just talking about these scenes and breaking it down and hit for his art for this movie. And I think he's been really, hungry for this exploration, this sense of this journey. And so it was probably, to me, is one of the highlights of making this movie, is just hanging out with Carl and just talking about, and he brought some really great ideas too, so we just kept kind of building and building and building together.
You got some big laughs there. Damn it, Jim! So what would be the biggest challenge for you here? I mean, where did you sort of find yourself going into the weeds and not knowing what to do?
I think with these films, I get that at the end of the day, it's where art collides with commerce, And I know that there's a studio that is, putting a lot of money into this, and they call this a tentpole for a reason, But I wanted to make sure that, we don't have that kind of cerebral business, whatever, infect what we're trying to do. But at the same time, we had to find the right journey for this film, because Star Trek is the only kind of franchise that's been able to kind of thrive in multiple mediums, and so
it's true.
Yeah, so I think our challenge is that it, whether it's a big space battle or just two people, or two human beings, or two beings talking in a room, the idea is to try to make sure that it's equally compelling. I think that it's been able to kind of thrive in that, and I want to make sure that it's something that we didn't take for granted.
So, would you do another one?
Whew. I love this whole journey, and I love the people. I love the cast. But it was a detour for me. I was ready to go make my little indie movie, and it's become the greatest detour of my career.
I looked you up. You had about 15 things announced. I know you have this company that's trying to do some productions in China.
Just every year. I've been very fortunate. I came from the indie world, and I've been able to kind of try all these things, and it's contributed personally, I think, to my growth and evolution as a filmmaker. And I've been very fortunate not to have to make any decisions on projects based on business, and this one, it's become like probably the most personal movie to me to date, and so, and I know that also sequels are kind of earned, so we'll see how this one does if the studio wants to have another one. But I definitely take those conversations very seriously, but just as much as walking away from a Fast franchise, I had to, because at that point I didn't think it was going to contribute to my growth.
So you're not going to go back to that?
Right now, that unless the right situation and the right ideas, it changes. And again, having options is a good thing.
So what's next specifically?
I'm working on a few things. I'm working on 3 projects right now, just writing wise. So I'll probably have a better sense of it, in a couple months.
So sadly, Anton Yelchin, a great loss. I had the chance to meet him, and he was a sweetheart. Did you have to make any changes at all in the film after his death in the editing room?
No, I mean, I kind of went back. I think it's still very kind of raw, but I think when it happened, we were still kind of 3-4 weeks out from finishing the film, so we had to keep moving ahead. And I did take a little time off with the whole crew, and we went back and revisited all the footage, and it wasn't for any other reason except just to do it, and through that process, that there were a couple of moments that weren't in the original cut that I felt like really, kind of captured to me the essence of what I love about Anton. So I kind of, we were able to kind of put that into the final version of the film.
There's one shot of him very quietly, looking very sweet and soulful.
That's the
I know
the shot.
exactly which shot it is.
That wasn't in the original, the toast. And when we saw it, Kelly, who's cutting the scene, I looked at her and right away she put it in, and it felt like it captured in many ways what's so great about Anton's. There was never like a wasted moment with him, and that shot kind of, for me, like really kind of captured the essence of that.
Thank you.